This is video screen capture 3.3 and Biology 101 for Unit 3, and I was talking about DNA in the 3.2 video when I was cut off a time limit. I will just finish up saying a little bit more about DNA. DNA has strands, has sections of it called genes, and those code for special information that will cause an RNA molecule to be produced. From the nitrogenous base code in the gene, you get a nitrogenous base code in the RNA. That RNA strand will then be used and will be translated into an amino acid chain, a polypeptide chain. So we use RNA as a template to form the polypeptide chain, and that polypeptide chain will eventually begin to fold going from a primary structure to a secondary structure, eventually to a tertiary structure. Different tertiary structures will come together to form a quaternary structure we call a functional protein. And I think that covers pretty much everything I was wanting to talk about with DNA. Just a quick look at it. We'll back up. One of the things that you notice that I mentioned was that DNA contains a phosphate group, which means it contains phosphorus. It does not contain sulfur. Protein contains sulfur, but it does not contain phosphorus. That's important in the study of it. Also, just as a little bit of a review, when I was talking about the carbohydrates always contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and the hydrogen to oxygen ratio is roughly 2 to 1. And you see that with glucose, fructose, and many of the other sugars. The lipids, if I can scroll down rather quickly to where the lipids begin. Lipids are always composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And you can see that those three letters, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. However, the hydrogen to oxygen ratio in lipids is much higher. It may be 20 to 1, but it's much higher than 2 to 1. And that translates to much greater energy value of lipids versus carbohydrates. That's where it becomes important. There's a lot of energy in the carbon, hydrogen, and carbon-carbon bonds. And so the more of those the lipid has, the better for it energy-wise. I also mentioned when I was talking about lipids being hydrophobic, the opposite of hydrophobic is hydrophilic. And carbohydrates will tend to be hydrophilic and proteins tend to be hydrophilic. That literally means water-loving. They like to mix with water. And we generally divide molecules into those that are hydrophobic versus those that are hydrophilic. That's one way of dividing them. Water-based versus oil-based. We do that with our paints, with enamel paint being an oil-based paint and the latex being a water-based paint, though it's harder to get enamel paints anymore. I think that pretty much covers what I needed to cover, and my review over this last section. This last screen capture is a short one because of that. The protein, I should mention, just stating again, will always contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur. Not all the amino acids contain sulfur, but protein contains sulfur. And when protein is broken down, hydrogen sulfide is often released, and that's that rotten egg odor that you smell from things that are rotting. Okay, if you have any questions about any of the notes, please let me know, and if you think I left out anything or there might be something of interest, please let me know about it. I would like to include it in the future, at least for future classes. Hope you do well on this Unit 3 test.